unmute you. Okay, let's wait for some people to join in. I think we're already seeing some participants joining in. We'll wait for maybe 30 seconds more and then start.
Yeah, sure.
Okay, I think let's start. Uh, because more people will keep on joining in as we go along. So first of all, thank you so much for joining in. Whoever or all the attendees who have joined, early on. So today we would be discussing regarding DevOps. So we wanted to have a session which is like a beginner's guide into DevOps, and we would discuss certain things that a beginner has to know, that what is DevOps, what are the essential skills and knowledge for entry level DevOps roles, how you can build your skills with the right resources, and maybe touch upon some career paths, job roles, etc. So for this session, our guest speaker is Dipayan Pramanik. He is currently the software is working as a software consultant with Nashtec, and he has more than 2 years of experience into DevOps tools and technologies. So he will be taking us through the session today, and I would just request everyone to drop in your questions, whatever you have regarding the topic. There is a Q&A box right in the center in the panel below, and you can just let us know your questions, and we can take it up after we are done with the sessions. So Dipan, without any further delay, over to you. You can begin the presentation.
Okay, yeah, thank you. Okay, so hey everyone. So let's get started, right? So let me tell you what this session is going to be. So in today's industries, right, DevOps is a huge word. Everyone is looking for DevOps engineers, right? And this is very much in demand. So in this session, we'll demystify what this DevOps is, what you need to be a DevOps engineer, how to get started, right? And once you learn DevOps, what are the career paths that you have, what can you become, and what you need to do, and some tips and tricks that you need to I'll provide that you can follow to land a job in DevOps field, right? So before proceeding with the session, I'll like to introduce myself again. I am Dipayan and I am working as a DevOps engineer for nearly 2.5 years in Nasdaq India. And my expertise lies in cloud Kubernetes, and I'm also a certified Kubernetes administrator. So these are some tools that which may sound like it might seem like what are they, what is he talking about, right? That's completely fine, but these are one of the most in demand tools and technologies in DevOps field in today. Okay, so a little more about myself. I joined as a fresher, right? I did not have any knowledge in these technical things and these software life cycles, right? I joined as a fresher, and so yeah, freshers can become DevOps engineer. But let me warn you, it's going to be a little tiring. It will need some little more dedication, right? But I can assure you the end result will be a good one, because see, I am also a DevOps engineer. With a little dedication you can become too. And if you are a software developer, that's a very easy step, right? You have half of the knowledge that you have. But if you are not, don't worry, you can become one. Okay, so let's start with the session. Let's look at today's agenda, right? So as I said, this session will be like what is DevOps? How can you choose a DevOps career path, right? But before going into that, the question that might arise, why you should choose a DevOps career path, right? So I'll tell you why you should choose a DevOps career path. Why not some other career paths? Yeah, there are career paths like developers, data scientists, Golang developers, a lot more. You can choose that, but why choose DevOps, right? So I'll take a look at that. Then I'll explain what is DevOps. I'll explain to you using a very simple analogy of news press, right? And I'll explain CI/CD and some DevOps principles. I'll show you a roadmap and some comprehensive guide. This is not exactly a guide. It will contain some links to video lectures and all, which are some DevOps, which are links to some platforms, and some are YouTube videos that have all these DevOps tutorials. And then we'll understand what next. What's next? So once you have learned DevOps, right? So today will be an introductory session that will be the stepping stone for you to start a career in DevOps, to start the DevOps journey. So once you complete that, once you have acquired all the knowledge, what should you do next to land a job, right? So these are all the agendas. So let's get started. So why choose a DevOps, right? So if you see this graph, right, this graph is for the last 1 year. So in the last 1 year, uh, in LinkedIn, there have been many job openings, right? 26% is for development and 23% is for DevOps, and 19% is for IT operation infrastructure and all these things. But there is one thing: once you learn DevOps, apart from being a DevOps engineer, you can choose a career path that has similarities to a DevOps engineer, and that is platform engineer, which has a 3%, and IT operations or infrastructure, that is 19%. So it sums up to more than 40%, right? So you choose a DevOps career path and you have so many options. So 40% of the job openings are related to DevOps. And there are two screenshots, right? I went into LinkedIn, I only searched DevOps engineer, and there were 8 to 10 pages of search results. And these are only two screenshots of the first page, and that's not yet like not the full page, the half of them, right? And you can see there are so many DevOps opening: DevOps engineer, AWS DevOps, Kubernetes administration. So these are all the things, right? So once you learn DevOps, many multiple career paths will be open to you, right? And we'll go through that at the end. What are the career paths that will be open? And these demand of DevOps engineer is increasing rapidly. And let me tell you why. Because the use of internet, the use of these streaming applications, use of these online applications are increasing, right? And someone needs to manage these applications, and that's one of the tasks of DevOps. Okay, so now let's understand what DevOps is, right? Okay, uh, I apologize, it was not in the present mode, but I'll do it now. Okay, so let's understand what DevOps is. Let me go to the next part. Yeah. So for a minute, just forget what DevOps is, right? Let's forget that. Let's understand how a new space works. So this is a very new space. It has been started by two people. They uh, themselves write up the content, they verify if the contents are factually correct, they manually prints it, and they distribute it to the customers. Let's say there are only three customers. So every week they release a magazine, they write up the content, they verify it, they print it, and they themselves distribute it to the end users or the customers who view the magazines, who read the magazines every week. But for some reason, a few days went by, and these number of customers grew from 3 to 3000, and these customers are spread everywhere, right? So it becomes impossible for these two people to deliver these many things, right? So what they did, they hired a team who will only be responsible for writing the content. They hired a different team who will be responsible only for verifying the contents that the first team has written. And they hired a different team who will take these like contents that have been verified, right? And they will continuously use the digital printers to print it. And they have a different team, let's say the courier services, who is in demand, who is responsible for making these magazines delivered to the end customers, right? So they have appointed all these small teams, and these teams are working very closely to each other to get the work done. How? So the content writing team has written a content, and this verification team will work closely with them to verify every content that is being written, right? Once the content is written, it is passed, they check it, and if they find the error, they send it back to the content writing. So they work in close proximity, and after the verification is done, same works here. This team works very closely with them, and they see if they also find some issues, they send it back to the content writing, and same goes here, right? So all these teams are working together for a end goal, and it's kind of a chain of events, right? Once the content is written, it is verified, it is printed, it is distributed. So these are all separate events, and they are chained together into a pipeline, right? And a lot of automation have been achieved. Firstly, they used manual printers, right? Now they use digital printers. What digital printers are? Like, you do a control P and you can print 1,000 copies of a single page. So now, due to this, what happened, their business grew, right? So now, instead of weekly release, they can do a daily release, like daily publishing of magazines, and they can send it, make it available to the customers. They do not need to worry about every other thing, right? Every other team is present and they're responsible for their own task. So this makes the magazine delivery and publishing very easy. So this was the news press analogy, right? Now let's look at that analogy with a DevOps mindset. So in the first stage, right, the contents are written, they are verified, they are printed. Again, content is written, verified, and printed. So new contents are continuously getting added or integrated to the existing content, right? This is called continuous integration. And once these contents are written, right, they are distributed to the end users, and that is called continuous delivery. So this continuous integration, or in short they are called CI, and continuous delivery, CD, forms the heart of DevOps. So DevOps at the base is CI and CD along with something else, but one of the most important principle of DevOps is CI CD. So that is CI, continuously integrate newer content and make those newer contents available to the customers. That is CD. Okay, so now let's understand what DevOps is at its core. So let's take a look at this DevOps, right? Let's divide it into two things, dev and ops. So dev means development and developing new features, right? That's dev. And what is ops? Ops means operations team. So what are the operations? Making these new code changes, new applications available, make it available to the end users. That is ops. And what is DevOps? Combination of these two teams, these two tasks, these two events together to form a long pipeline, long chain of events, so that once a code is written, it goes through some smooth automated process to be available to the end users. So this is the DevOps cycle, right? DevOps life cycle. It's an infinity sign because it's never ending. And how I am going to explain. So as I said, dev and ops. So this part is dev and this part is ops. So you plan out what the application will be, what the application functionality will be. Then you write the code and you commit it into GitHub. So GitHub is a version control system. Here you commit all these codes, you write the code and you store it in the GitHub so that these changes are not lost. If you store it in the local, the problem is your local system can crash, right? And these changes might be reverted. So GitHub is a platform where you store all these source codes, and Git is the technology that you use to interact with GitHub. So once you have written the code, right, you need to build that code to see if it's building perfectly, right? So for that there are many tools. Here it is build out and work, right? But apart from that, there is Maven, there is Gradle. So it's language specific. So let's say you have created a program in Java, right? So you will probably use Maven to uh, like compile these. So Maven is one such tool that is used to compile the Java codes, and then you will do some testing. So there are many testing tools like PyTest, Selenium, JUnit, right? You will run some test functionality test on the application that you have created, and once that is done, you will release it. What this release means, you will package it. So if I go back in newspress, what was happening, once this content is written, right, it is, the coding is done, it is verified, that is tested, and then it is printed. it means packaged into a magazine. So here it is packaged into a Docker image or maybe WAR files, right? These are all artifacts. If they sound confusing and overwhelming, that's completely fine, because I do not expect you to understand all these terminologies now. But the core concept is you write the code, you build and test it, and you package it into some form. So what this package means, this package can be easily shared with anyone, and they can use that package to launch that application. So they package it and they deploy it. What this deploy means, deploy means making it available to the end users so that the end users can use it. So let's consider Facebook, right? So the Facebook developers have written a code, they will build it, they will test it, and they'll package it, right? And they will deploy it. And how do you check the deployment? So they deploy it and it becomes available on facebook.com, and the end users like us can verify or access those changes, right? Access that portal and view those changes that have been done. And what this operate and monitor is, so after the deployment is done, right? After the deployment is done, they're continuously monitored. Like if the facebook.com is working fine, if there is some functionality issues, so let's say we have changed a functionality, so it will be continuously monitored if there is a issue in that. And if there is a issue, it goes back to the planning phase, it sends the feedback to the planning phase, and they plan out how this issue can be resolved. So it's a never ending cycle. So these cycle consists of, so these code build test, right? These are all stages. So this cycle is comprised of all these stages. And so for every stage, right, you will need a tool. To code you will need Git, to build you will need Maven or build out, right? To test you will need Selenium, to deploy and package you will need Docker, to operate, to like manage all these deployments, right? Let's say facebook.com is having a higher traffic, so you need to scale out those facebook.com so that uh, it does not crash, right? So that is done through so for that stage there is Kubernetes, Ansible, and for monitoring there is Prometheus, Nagios. So basically for every stage there is a tool, there is a different tool at every stage. So this stage and this stage, but these stage are all independent, right? So how do you make it dependent on each other, that once this code, this stage is succeeded, this stage is successful, run this stage, once this is successful, run this stage. So how do you make that dependency? So that's where the CI/CD tools comes into picture. Let's say Jenkins, GitLab CI/CD. So you have all these stages, and what these CI/CD tools does, they help you integrate or they help you join all these stages together to form a chain of events or to form a pipeline. So that is CI/CD or DevOps. And now the thing is, for every stage there will be tons of tools, right? Today there is a tool in demand, tomorrow that tool will change. So that's not new, that will always happen. But one thing that is common, all these tools share the same ideology. So you do not need to study about all of those tools, right? You do not need to be a professional in all those tools. You pick out the one tool that is in demand now, you be proficient with that, and once that tool is replaced by a new tool, right, maybe some things will change, but rest assured the ideology will not change. So the things, the concepts that you have learned in this tool, that will be applicable to the next tool, right? That will never change. So people ask that, being a DevOps engineer, these tools really change, right? They change every day. So how do you cope with that? You do not need to cope with that, because you cannot be expected to be professional in all those tools. That's not humanly possible, right? You need to pick one of the tool that is in demand, you need to be professional in that, and once a new tool comes in, you can use those same knowledge and ideologies in the next tool, in the new tool, and you can get good at it, because at the base all these foundation ideas are same. So this is continuous integration, continuous delivery and deployment, and this is DevOps. So another principle of DevOps is automation. So what automation is, so let's say I have written a code, I have manually built it, I have manually tested it, I have packaged it manually and I have deployed it, and I am manually monitoring it, checking it every minute or every 10 minutes if it is running or not. If not, I take action on that. So if the application is very small, that is fine, but once your application grow, that is not possible, right? Because let's say a new bug fix comes in, a new issue comes in, a new glitch comes in, you need to quickly resolve that. You need to quickly write that code, quickly test it, and make it available to the end users. So if you do that manually, let's say to do it manually, every step takes 2 hours of time. So 1 2 3, and it will take nearly 10 to 12 hours of time, right? But it's a very critical thing and you need to be get it resolved within 1 hour. So what do you do? So as I said, CI/CD tools help you integrate all these stages in such a way that there is a automation that is uh, generated. So what this means, you write some scripts that CI/CD tool understands, and what this script says that run this stage, and once that is done, run this, and then this. So it creates these chain of events, these dependency chart. So the only thing that you need to do, you write the code and you push it into the Git. So using the scripts that you have created, the CI/CD tool will detect the changes and it will trigger all these events that you have pre-planned. So every time you need a new application to be released, new changes to be released, you do not need to do all these manually. Only thing you need to do is write the code, because all these things are pre-planned by you. You will write the scripts that will be triggered and that will run all these things. So that is automation. So these are principles. So you have to continuously integrate the code, you have to continuously deliver it to the end users, and you'll have to do these things in an automated way. So all these things should be automated and should require very minimum manual intervention. So this is what DevOps is. So here I have mentioned two roadmaps, right? So let's open these roadmaps. I'll copy these links, right? So you'll need a proper roadmap to get started with DevOps. So these are two of the roadmaps that I find very useful, right? These are not created by me. So if you search, you'll find a lot of roadmaps, right? You do not need to create a roadmap on your own. These roadmaps will do the work for you. You can just go through them and you can leverage them and to get started. So let's take a look at this, right? So I'll go through it once. So first you need to learn Git, right? What are the Git basic commands? As I said, here the codes are merged into Git, and once a new code is changed into Git, like committed to Git, right, you'll need to run all these events. So you need to have a proper understanding of how Git works. So you first start with Git, and you need to learn one programming language. So as I said, DevOps is Dev plus Ops, right? So you need to have a very good idea of on what is Dev. You do not need to be a very professional on developing. um, that's not entirely necessary, but you need to have an idea how development process works, how a code is written, how these codes are built, right? And not only that, once you learn these Python and Go, or maybe Go, right? So you can use these scripting languages to create these chain of events, right? So as I said, you need to write some scripts to create this pipeline, right? So if you have knowledge about Python, right, you can leverage that Python to create that chain of events. So one of the programming language is necessary. So Python is the best option. If you want to learn Golang, that's also fine. Golang is very high in demand because all these tools that you have been learning at stages, right, some of the tools are currently being developed in Golang. So once you have a grasp of one of the programming language, you need to learn Linux. So these applications that you have created, right, they are deployed somewhere, right, some servers. So Linux is the operating system. So in most of the cases, these servers on which it is deployed, Linux is the main operating system. So you need to learn what Linux is, and not learn. You need to have a very good hands on what how to work on Linux. So if I go to this roadmap, right, again, so in Linux, right, what they are saying, you learn to live in terminal. So Linux is basically command based, right? You need to learn about all those commands that you need to run. You need to be very familiar with these commands. So once you are done with that, you need to learn a little bit about networking and security. I think these are all very popular terms to you. If not, that is fine. If you do not know, that is fine. If you know, still it's better to take a look at these, because these are not very difficult, but they comes in handy. The OSI model, DNS, HTTP, SSH, right? And once you have Linux and these networking concepts, you can use these two to learn server management, like how you can create a server, how you can create a reverse proxy, how you can use firewall to block traffics from the external world. Once all of these things are done, right, you have an idea how a server is managed to deploy application, right? You have learned how you can manage the servers, how you can prepare a server to host the application. Now the next thing is how you will host the application. So there containers comes into picture. Containers as in Docker. So you'll need to learn what Docker is. So Docker is a very in demand technology, and you will need to learn what Docker is, how you can package an application into Docker. As I said, in Newspress you are packaging an application, packaging as magazine. Here in DevOps, most of the cases the applications are packaged as a DevOps container, as a DevOps, as a sorry, as a Docker image. Okay, not DevOps, it's Docker image. So once this packaging is done, right, you need to get it deployed. You need to manage it. You need to manage it at scale. So if there are more users, you need to scale out the application. There you learn container orchestration, and one of the tool that is very much in demand for container orchestration is Kubernetes. So Kubernetes jobs are very frequent. So if you open LinkedIn, so out of 20 job openings, nearly 12 will be on Kubernetes, because Kubernetes is so much in demand. And then you learn infrastructure as code. So uh, you have learned how to prepare a server, right? But that's one server. What if there are 200 servers? You cannot do it manually, right? And as I said, DevOps principle is automation. So here in infrastructure as code, you will learn how you can manage all these 100 servers at scale, how you can create all these 100 servers, how you can install some tools on these 100 servers at once and not manually one by one. So after all these things are ready, so these are basically stages, right? If I go here, so for the containers, right, this learn containers, you learn the deploy stage. For operate stage, these container orchestration and infrastructure as code, these comes into picture, right? So you have basically learned a tool for every stage. Right now you need to integrate all these stages together. So then comes the CI/CD. You need to set up a CI/CD server or tool, and you need to learn all these, how to integrate these. So specifically it's Jenkins or GitLab CI/CD. There are many things. So if you go here you will find the name of the tools. So learn some CI/CD tool: Jenkins, TeamCD, Circle CI. Infrastructure as code: Terraform, Ansible, Docker, web server, Apache Nginx. So here you follow what you need to do, which step you need to work on, and from this roadmap you pick up the tool that is in demand. So once that is done, you learn what monitoring and observability. You have deployed the application. Now you need to know how to monitor them, right? So you learn that monitoring, and next you learn the cloud provider. So that is one of the most important thing. You have learned how to create a server, how to manage those servers, how to deploy that application. But now the main focus is, nowadays every company prerequisite is they want to host their application on cloud provider. So three most in demand cloud providers are Azure, AWS, GCP. Any one of them is fine, because as I said, they might be different, but the ideology, the foundation is always the same. So if you learn AWS, you can use those knowledge for Azure as well as GCP. So learn any one of the cloud provider, and then you learn software engineering practices. So uh, like how a code is written and how it is made available to the end users, right? There need to be some uh, a record of that, right? That is called, and the agile practices, how you continuously write code and make it available to the end users. So these are the things that you need to learn. So this is one of the roadmap that you can follow to get started. And these are some of the popular resources. So Code Cloud is one such platform that has all the DevOps courses that you need to get started. You have some YouTube videos, and Shiksha Online has itself aggregated some courses from several sources that you can use to get started on DevOps. And last but not the least, to become a DevOps engineer, you have to make documentation your friend, because every single issue, right? Ultimately, you'll find it in documentation. You should make it a habit or practice to refer to documentation every chance you get. Okay, so these are all the things. I know this can sound overwhelming, right? Because these are so many things. But once you start following this roadmap and start learning all these tools, right? Individual tools, and go to CI/CD and start to integrate all of them, you will see that all these things will fall into place. At first, when you are learning about this stage, you will think that how will this stage work, right? So follow the roadmap, be a little patient, go through each of them, and ultimately at the end they all will fall into place and you will get the clear picture of what is what. So now you have learned what DevOps is, right? So today was an introductory session on DevOps. So now what you need to do, you need to follow that roadmap and get started. Now what's next? You have completed the roadmap, you have learned all these tools, you have done the integration of them. So what's next? So for the resume, it's always good to have some personal projects, right? And if you go into this link, right, you will find basic to advanced level of DevOps project. And this is not the only one. If you search into Google DevOps projects, right, you'll find many of them, and many advanced to basics, right? You can get started with any one of them. And once that is done, right, so as I said, there are many stages. So let me tell you one thing: there is no such company that will need an engineer who needs to be proficient in all of them. They should have idea about all of them, but no company wants an engineer that can do all of these things. If you look at the job opening, some will say we need a cloud engineer who is only proficient on cloud. They have idea about other things, but they are only proficient about cloud. Some will say we need a CI/CD engineer who is more comfortable on CI/CD. Some will say we need a Kubernetes administrator who will work on Kubernetes. Some will say we'll need a monitoring engineer who is very good at monitoring. So after you have learned all of these, right, you can go into the job openings, or you can find out what's best suited to you, and you can take that technology or tool and you can do a professional certificate on that. You do a lots of hands on, you do a professional certificate, and you can apply based on that. So what are the career paths that DevOps will provide, right? So if you are a fresher, so after you do this, right, you can join as a DevOps engineer, where mainly you manage all these CI/CDs. You can join as a DevOps cloud engineer. In the DevOps cloud engineer, you mainly work on CI/CD, but these CI/CDs are hosted on the cloud and not on some normal servers, right? You can be a SRE, site reliability engineer. What this means, you have your application deployed, right? But you need to manage the underlying servers, you need to manage the application and make it always available. So that is SRE. You can become a cloud architect. So what this cloud architect means, you plan out what are the cloud resources that will be created, what like you need to deploy application, right? But there are some prerequisite applications that are needed. So in cloud architect, you plan out, you work on these cloud resources. If you are a system administrator, you manage the servers. So these are servers, right? You configure those servers. So system administrator means you work on these operate part, Ansible and Terraform. You manage those servers. And there is a DevSecOps engineer. So DevSecOps is DevOps engineer, but you are also concerned about the security, about how to make these applications secure, how to make the infrastructure secure. So if you are a fresher, go through the roadmap, follow the roadmap, do all these projects, and find a technology that is most suited to you, that you are comfortable with. Do a professional certificate. And if you go into LinkedIn, right, there are many DevOps fresher jobs where you can join, and the requirements will change. Maybe you will join as a DevOps fresher, you have your expertise in CI/CD, but since you are a fresher, they might ask you to switch to a career in monitoring or something else. So always be open to that, never say no, because as a fresher, it's very difficult to find a job stream, find a stream that you like. But if it's related to DevOps, always like take that job offer, right? Never say no for that, because once you gain the experience, right, you can choose a stream of your own. You can be a CI/CD engineer, you can be a system admin. That will be totally dependent on you. But starting out, if the technology that you're being told to work on, if it's part of DevOps, always take it up. Never say no for at that phase, right? Because at that phase all you need is experience, so that in future you can have a higher ground when choosing these things. So with this, this is what basics of DevOps are, and what are the career paths that you can follow. Yeah.
Okay. So, Dipan, there are two questions that have come in. So the first question is, I am in DevOps already, but I feel more like an ops person than a dev. How can I be a better developer when it comes to DevOps?
Okay.
Uh,
See, uh, as I said, DevOps is Dev plus Ops, right? But it's not entirely true, because Dev is for the Dev people, right? And DevOps is the basically the team that will integrate the Dev and Ops team. So if you want to have a career more oriented towards Dev, right? So then let's say you are working in a project, right? You need to talk to that those project managers, your project team members, right? And you need to let them know that I am comfortable in development part as well. But most of the time it happens, if you are a DevOps, you are more inclined toward Ops, because the development team is not always comfortable with the Ops part. But if that's what you want, you need to talk to your team. If you are really good at Dev, you can work on the Dev part, but then your Ops experience will reduce, and your Ops responsibility will reduce, because it's either this or that. You cannot just work on both of them, because neither company wants that, right? If you write the code and if you manage them itself, there is a higher chance, if you have so many responsibilities, you will mess up some of them. So that's why they try to divide these responsibilities. So if you are more oriented towards Dev, you need to tell them and you need to prove your knowledge in that field. So I hope that clears the doubt, right?
yes. So the next question is, so Shubham asks, with the rise of platform engineering, what is the future of DevOps? Can platform engineers overpower DevOps engineers?
Okay, that's a really good question. Okay, let me tell you one thing. So, platform engineer, right? As I said, DevOps is not only managing the platform, right? DevOps is a lot more than that. The developer writes the application, they know how it functions, but they do not know how these applications are perceived, how they're used by the end users. Platform engineer knows how the underlying platform works, how these underlying infrastructure works. They do not know how these applications are perceived by the end user. So developers know how the applications work, and platform engineer knows how the platform works. But there needs to be some binding between them, right? That how these applications should be deployed on these platforms. So there can be separate platforms, and based on these platforms, the applications should change. Let's say some application needs this amount of memory and all, so that needs to be mapped there, and these needs to be mapped there. So these mapping and binding things a DevOps engineer can do. That's what platform engineers and developers will lack. So these joining part will be done by DevOps. So no, DevOps engineers works will not be overpowered by platform engineer. Platform engineer will always require a DevOps engineer to make that application available to the end users.
Okay, so we don't have any more live questions, but I wanted to take one question that we discussed that we would address. Can you share some tips with people here who are freshers and they are wanting to step into the DevOps field? Any interview tips, any job search tips at the time that you were looking out as a beginner?
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. Sure. So the first thing is, there are so many tools, as I said, right? And no company will want you to be proficient in all of them. But you need to have basic knowledge of some of the tools for which you are applying. If you are applying for a Terraform role, you need to have basic concepts on that, and basic concepts mean not theoretical, it should be hands on. Because I have been to interviews, right, where the interviewer has told to share your screen and write this code, and they have given me that freedom that you can refer the documentation, go refer the documentation, and take those things, use those to create the scripts, right? That's not an issue. What they are trying to see, if you can use the best practices and use those concepts to create the script. So be a more hands on and always refer to the documentation, make documentation your friend. Hands on and documentation, that's the best combination you can have, because nowadays every interview, more than verbal, it is hands on experience. So that is the thing that you can follow. And for job searching, one of the things that will highlight your CV is projects. So if you do projects, right, that will go a long way. Even experienced people mention their projects in the CV, because when you do a project with all these varying tools, right, that will be a highlight to the interviewer. He will definitely ask, what did you do? And when you explain that I created this pipeline, I did this, did that, that will be a very positive point. So these are two things that you can follow.
Okay. One more question that has come in. Which training institute is best for DevOps? You can mention, if I'm not sure if there are any training institutes, but you can maybe mention some names of online courses, certifications, some course providers as well.
Yeah,
If
there
you
are
have any
no,
idea about
yeah,
that.
no
Huh.
there are no institutes, but there are some platforms who offer online courses, right? One such is Code Cloud. That's very much in demand. That's one of the best. And other than that, there is Simply Learn, and you can find all these courses on Udemy, Coursera. So these are all those courses. They're spread everywhere. But if you want it aggregated together, Code Cloud is one of them. But yeah, it's costly. If you want to have a cost effective one, then you need to go to Udemy and search all these things. But Code Cloud is one of the platform that provides all these courses. So that is one of them.
Okay, so that brings us to the end of the session. I'm going to quickly launch a feedback poll here for the people who are attending. Just let us know if the session was helpful, and if you think that you would recommend it to, others, your peers and friends. So this is what it is. Also, this particular session was, we were live streaming it on YouTube as well. So you can just, I'm just posting in the link here in the chat box. You can go back to the session later on if you miss something, or if you want to, sort of revisit some part. Um, okay, so we have got some entries. I would appreciate that if there are more people, if they can just fill out the feedback poll, it would be helpful for us. Um, yeah, okay. All right. So I'm thank you so much for all the attendees who joined the session, and also thank you so much for asking the questions and making it interactive. And last but not the least, thank you so much, Dipayan, to take out the time, and it was a very well delivered session. And thank you so much for making the effort.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks a lot for this opportunity. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you so much. All right. So I'm just okay, quickly ending the poll here as well. And yeah, all right, all right. Just ending the session.